Hello there, I'm Mr. D and welcome to Tool of the Day. Today on Tool of the Day, I'm talking about a tool that not everybody has on hand in their toolbox, but they probably should. The chisel. Chisel's not much more than a handle with a sharp piece of metal attached to the end of it. The sizes and styles and varieties of chisels out there is endless. There's chisels for turning things on the lathe, there's chisels for hand carving, there's chisels for general use, for carpentry, for masonry, for stone cutting, for all kinds of purposes. Today I'm just going to be talking about some of the most simple and basic ones that you're likely to find at your hardware store that are good for odd jobs around the house and some light-duty woodworking. This chisel right here is what you'd call a carpenter's chisel. Carpenter's chisels aren't really meant for super precise fine detail work, but they are nice for odd jobs around the house like mortising door hinges or cutting out openings for new locks and door hardware and things like that. Sometimes power tools just don't get us the level of detail and precision that we need. And even hand saws are limited to the straight line that they can cut, where chisels can get into very tight spots and corners more easily. The key to a chisel doing its job is being very, very, very sharp. Maintaining that sharp edge is critical, so using a woodworking chisel on something harder than wood is a bad idea. Chisels aren't for scraping glue or paint. For that, you should use a scraper. They're not for opening cans of paint. For that, you should use a can opener. They're not for driving screws. For that, you should use a screwdriver. The steel of a chisel is very, very hard, which makes it hold an edge well, but it also makes it somewhat brittle. So if you run a chisel into a piece of metal, even as something as simple as a staple or a nail in a piece of wood, you're likely to ding up the cutting edge, and then it's not going to be very much use as a chisel. They can be sharpened and reground to a brand new edge, but it's a time-consuming, somewhat difficult process, and it requires things like sharpening tools. So best to keep your chisels in pristine condition by never cutting anything with them besides wood. A chisel that's been sharpened properly can even shave the hair off the back of your hand. If it can't do this, it's probably not quite sharp enough. The type of chisels that I have here are what's called bench chisels. They're good all-purpose chisels. They come in a variety of widths. A simple set like this one will get you through most household tasks without a problem. This particular style has a metal cap on the end, which indicates that it's meant to be struck with a hammer or a mallet to drive it forward. That's a typical feature of carpenter's chisels. Most woodcarver's chisels are going to have a wooden handle that's meant to be held and pushed along by hand and not so much tapped in there with a mallet or a striking tool. This set is an example of a very cheap beginner level wood carving chisel, and these are nice to have around if you need to do some specific carving applications in areas where a bench chisel just can't quite maneuver. One of the biggest mistakes people can make with a chisel is to hold a piece of material with one hand and work the chisel with the other hand, with the chisel pointed towards the user. It's very easy for a chisel to slip out of the piece of material and cut into your hand that you're holding the wood with. And these things are seriously sharp, so you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself a trip to the emergency room if you work that way. Always point the chisel away from you and always use an amount of pressure that you can control with your hand. Very often when we're using power tools to carve and shape and cut wood, little bits of material are left behind, and sometimes these things can be a little bit tricky to remove with the same power tools. So having a chisel on hand is a nice option for clearing out the corners left behind by router bits after drilling holes to create a mortise. So if you pick yourself up a decent set of all-purpose chisels, you'll be glad you did. Just make sure you take care of them, learn how to sharpen them, and they'll last you forever. I'm Mr. D, and thanks for watching Tool of the Day.